I'd like to call the March or the July 16th ADA Compliance Committee meeting to order. Can we have a roll call? I'm Jim Whaley, the ADA Committee.
Debbie Lane.
Brad Langsether, Open Lands Manager, City of Helena.
Ellie Ray, Senior Planner with the city. Ann Shutt, Housing Coordinator.
And David Knopke, Transportation Systems.
And if those of you who are online would like to unmute yourselves and share who you are as well.
I believe I just gave you all permission to talk.
Jacob
Hi,
Krusovich.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm Jeannie
Melinda Reed.
with St. Peter's Health.
Everybody.
Thank you all for being here. The first order of business would be to review and approve the minutes from the March 19th meeting. Are there any discussion points on those minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Sure, I'll do a motion to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. The next order of agenda item is the any complaints? Is there any complaints?
Chair Whaley, no, there are not any. I apologize that the actual complete report, the one-page document didn't make it out to all of you with the information online, but no, there were no complaints received between the March meeting and now.
Okay. And we have a presentation by the Open Lands and Trails Division.
We do, and if everybody would bear with us, Ann Pichette is working to get it shared with everybody, I think. So we just
And I'm
need to.
so sorry because the mouse is not really working, so I'm doing my best. No, so we
Nope, that's not what I wanted. This mouse is being.
yeah, it's like just all over the place.
Well, they have it on super fast, so anything.
Let's get this. And we don't want that on both. Sorry, everyone online. This is our first time running the meeting between the tech in this room.
Can anyone who's on Zoom tell us if you're seeing a PowerPoint right now?
We cannot see it right now.
We could see it previously, though.
Yeah,
So there now.
there it is. Yep.
Oh, hi, Gina.
Yeah. If you were biking in Glacier during some time. Okay, Brad, you can just ask Ann to advance slides whenever you're meeting and we'll see if it works.
Yeah, I'll just do next when I want you to move forward. I'll move through it fairly quickly. Thanks again for having me today. Brad Langsether, Open Lands Manager, City of Helena Parks Department. Today we're going to be talking about some accessible trails that are located within the natural park or open lands portion of the parks system. And I'll feel free to answer any questions at the end of it. I'll just move through the opportunities that we have put on the landscape over the last decade. So before you have a slide, and it shows 3 different trail systems that we have within the open lands now. One is the Saddle Drive Trail, and it's located out at the South Helena exit off of Saddle Drive. And many of you know this as the Frisbee Golf Course. So We have a parking area that's just off of Cabernet and Saddle where you can park and access the trail. And this trail is a decomposed granite trail that travels from the parking area in a kind of a semicircle back around to Saddle Drive, which is a concrete sidewalk. Another trail that we have within the system, many of you may remember from just a couple of years ago, is the Ambrose Accessible Trail on Mount Helena. And that trail leaves from the lower tier of the Reader's Village trailhead parking area and proceeds westerly up on the north face of Mount Helena to an overlook area. And then one that we just added to the system last summer. This was a product of the Upper DeFord Working Group that convened a few years ago and came up with recommendations for many call Davis Gulch. It's actually Dry Gulch, but it's off of Davis Street. And the final product of that group from an accessible trail standpoint was the completion of the Upper DeFord Universal Access Trail. So next slide, please.
Oh, it doesn't look like a second.
Maybe just click it. Oh, there you go. Is that the next slide? Or we do go? Do we
Yep,
go too
that's
far?
it. So this slide depicts the location of the Saddle Drive Trail again to orient yourself. If you get off I-15 at the South Helena exit, it's just a short distance to the area that's highlighted in yellow is where the parking area, asphalt parking area is. And many of you use this trail. It's been in service for right at 10 years now. Is getting a lot of use from a wide variety of users. Next slide, please. Midway through the trail, there's a steel bridge that crosses a gulch, and this trail has a grade of less than 5% for the entire trail distance. Next slide, please. Another trail that I mentioned just a minute ago is the trail that was constructed on the north face of Mount Helena. Again, leaves the lower tier of the Reader's Village parking area. Next slide, please. This trail has a sign on it that depicts grade, cross slope, surface, and this will be a common theme on our accessible trails to have a sign like this that just kind of lets users know what they can expect on the trail. And again, this is a little more aggressive trail. Does have a 6.5% grade, but we do have resting areas throughout the trail. The trail was built in compliance with the USDA accessible standards. Next slide, please. And thanks to many different donors, the primary donor of this project was the Rotary Club, but we also had donations from the History Foundation. We were able to provide resting points along the trail where we have benches that you can sit on, and there's a resting place the final end of the trail where you can overlook the city and see the Sleeping Giant, the Big Belts. You can see the cathedral, Carroll College. It's really turned into one of our centerpiece trails on Mount Helena. Within 24 months, this trail became the second most used trail within Mount Helena City Park. Next slide, please. This slide depicts the trail that's in, if you proceed southward on Davis Street. The Orchard Range. In yellow, that depicts the path the trail as it leaves the old shooting range trailhead. Next slide, please. At the old shooting range trailhead, it's a gravel parking lot, but with donations from the Trails for Trails event a couple of years ago. We were able to install a concrete parking area with 3 handicap parking spots, one of which is van accessible, and they all allow you to leave the concrete and go on to the trail that is, it was constructed using crusher fines and then rolled to achieve compaction. Next slide, please. And this trail again has the same type of sign that you see up on Mount Helena. This trail is a little less aggressive. We get down to the 4% category. And next slide, please.
Sorry.
That's okay. This trail provides a completely different experience than you see on Mount Helena, where Mount Helena is more of a visual type trail. This trail allows the trail user to proceed up through a deciduous draw, which is kind of a rarity within the city of Helena's open space system because we're so coniferous dominated. It's actually a nice cool draw in the summer and a real pleasant experience. 2 final additions to this trail will be resting benches, very similar to what you see on the Mount Helena Trail. And with that, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. Next slide, please. This is my assistant.
Hey, Tim.
Sweet assistant.
I heard your voice, so I just thought I'd stop and say hi.
Thanks.
What are you guys working on?
ADA Compliance
Oh,
Committee
okay,
meeting.
good.
You're always welcome to join.
Have a great meeting.
Thank you, Tim.
So Brad, one trail you did mention is the Centennial Trail. And is near Lewis Clark Brewery, extends to Benton.
And I didn't mention that trail only because it's a developed park.
Right. So
And-
these are your outside of the Helena system. Yeah, but that's another, I mean, you've got lots of other trails within the city that are not necessarily in the open space, correct?
No, they aren't, and they provide,
And different,
they provide different levels of experience, and often on the Centennial Trail, as many of you know, you're on an asphalt surface for a great length of that trail. And within the open land system, many of the natural parks, asphalt is not an option.
right,
And so we've tried 2 different surfaces, decomposed granite and the crusher fines. I find pluses and minuses to both surfaces. But we have had great success in maintaining compaction on the Saddle Drive Trail for a full decade with minimal maintenance. And the Mount Helena Trail achieved a pretty hard surface. We have had some weather events up on Mount Helena where we've had to do some repairs, but primarily we're really happy with what we're getting as far as use on the trails and how well the trails are holding up.
the trails out by the Archie Bray are not city, not city trails.
No, those trails are on Berkeley Fair Land Trust property that was purchased with Department of Defense funds.
Right.
And that, as you know, ties into Spring Meadow and of course into Centennial Trail. Those are great trails too, as far as very little grade, and they have a fairly compacted parking area off of Williams Street.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee?
Thank you. I appreciate being able to use open spaces
on the first one out by Montana City, I used that with an adaptive device, and some of the switchbacks were kind of tight. That if they were wider, I would be able to navigate that better. I noticed that with a lot of trails that and single lane trails, that those corners can really impact the ability to navigate those corners. And then with the sitting spaces, I haven't been up on Mount Helena, but I would be curious to see if I could get in with my adaptive bike, because that's probably the only thing that could handle those grades and be able to use something like that. So, but I think those are really important spaces to have sitting areas that also have them big enough to accommodate larger adaptive devices, because some of the feedback I've gotten over the decades is, well, you know, who's used that? And somebody in a wheelchair isn't going to get up there. Why do we need to have accessible bathrooms in these parking lots? Because who's going to use it? And let me tell you, I go in the backcountry and I use those outhouses in the backcountry airstrips, and I really appreciate it when they have a ramp. And people are like, well, you know, but most of them I couldn't use by myself because they weren't really designed to have a wheelchair back there. So I think, you know, for designing this stuff, getting input from people who actually use devices and like to experience the outdoors might improve our longevity of these and the ability for multiple devices to use them. So thank you for doing that. And I'm always an advocate. The ADA says, you know, that we're supposed to include people with disabilities. But I wonder, you know, how many people with disabilities were consulted in any of these processes?
That's a good question, and we certainly appreciate feedback of any kind on people that, like the feedback you've provided on the switchbacks, is beneficial, because those are things that we can go out on the landscape and do perhaps a few tweaks and make it a lot more enjoyable. And we've had some feedback on the Mount Helena Trail, and we've worked on items on that. But I guess that's what I would recommend is we would appreciate if we continue to get feedback, and especially on the use of the resting areas, because we try to meet the guidelines, but we're just using basically distances and cross slopes and such to try to meet those guidelines. So if there's something else we can do, we'd sure appreciate it.
And there were a few advocates from the disabled community that assisted with the Detroit Trail in that process, as I recall.
There were.
I was one of them. Or was that the one at the?
In Davis, we had Joel there, and we had goodness, I'm blanking on the gentleman's name right now from Milk.
Oh,
sorry, they're not even called Milk anymore. Ability Montana. But yes, we did have some folks out there, and it was an eye opener.
It was, and we tried a couple of different things. I didn't stay on the slide of the trail for the Upper DeFort Universal Access Trail, but we went with no bicycles on that trail. So it's a pedestrian specific trail, and dogs must be on a leash to just try to provide everyone with a little better experience. And I was up there a couple of days ago, and I'm really pleased that the bicycling community is using other routes, which we provided other routes as well. So I didn't see a lot of bicycle tracks on the trail, and it's really holding up well. And so I think that was a good decision on the part of the committee.
So are wheelchairs allowed on that trail?
Yeah, just bicycles. That was all input from the committee for what parameters they wanted to see on it, how they wanted to see it designed, the width.
So I think Gina has an adaptive tricycle, correct?
Would I be able to
Would that
take
be
that
allowed?
on there?
That'd be allowed, right?
Yeah, give it a try because as you'll see kind of how we position the parking pad and everything, and you lead from that. Just let us know if there's enough room as you go around items. And, it's a nice trail. When you get up to the end of it, it kind of swings around. It doesn't have any sharp curves, so neither it nor the Mount Helena Trail have any true switchbacks. We've kind of tried to work away from them, but as we talked about many times, and I think you and I spoke about that, topography is a challenge for us
Right.
because we just don't have a lot of level flowing properties. And that's why Saddle Drive was the first property that we worked with. And I forgot to mention that all of the projects that we saw today were a product of grant support. And I find that I can be really competitive if the disabled community brings a trail idea. Those compete really well on the grant spectrum as far as taking it from concept to reality. And we were able to do that with all three of these trails. So, but certainly any feedback is welcome.
So Brad, as you look at future developments, I know I think you have 70 some miles of trails within your system. I'm been on most of them, but not all of them. Do you have more trails, either ADA, but mainly ones that you're thinking about would be even areas where if you were to develop another accessible trail? And I'm thinking maybe off of the LeGrand area as you develop some of those areas.
Exactly. I do have more ideas in my head. And I think if you'll remember, one thought was the Ambrose accessible eventually at some point in the future, having it come clear around the mountain and tie into LeGrand. And I've also now kind of looking at going south out of the Reader's parking area and what opportunities there are to wrap around towards the McKelvey Trail.
Right.
So there's certainly opportunities. Some properties not so much. I haven't really been able to develop a concept coming out of South Beatty Street just because of the topography right there is I'm so hemmed in.
Right.
On where I have to start. But yeah, I mean, initially I didn't really have Upper DeFord on my radar, and it certainly ended up working very well. So I think it's just a matter of looking out into the future and keeping looking, look for opportunities.
Thank you.
While we have you here, Brad, could I prevail upon you to give an update on e-bikes?
So where the Open Lands Division is with e-bikes, as many of you know, they're considered motorized, and there's no motorized recreation within the city's open lands system. And there's two very controlling reasons for that. We have USFS property within our boundaries that dissects several of our properties, and U.S. Forest Service is unwilling to look at any other options with where our trails cross them. So that kind of stalemates us there. And then we have multiple properties that have deed restrictions that were associated with the grant funding that precludes motorized recreation. So the deed restriction would have to be lifted on that property. So we're still looking at the standpoint of the 2011 Department of Justice ruling where if someone is handicapped, then you can use an electronic device, whether we, consider it motorized or not. But if you don't have a disability, then you can't be using an e-bike within the open land system. So that hasn't changed.
I just wanted to bring that up, Jim. While he's here.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's the position of this committee that people with disabilities, that's a reasonable accommodation, allowing them to use, motorized bikes. There are people that may have, certainly some of our senior citizens who formerly were avid bikers may not have a defined disability, but certainly their age and their physical ability. And I'm thinking of a gentleman who's in his 80s who likes to mountain bike and get out in the trail system. And that affords them the ability. So what's your opinion on some of our more elderly senior citizens?
Well,
they may not be disabled to the extent Gina's disabled, but they certainly have disabilities.
and I think from that standpoint, we're still looking at that gray area that until we can come to an answer on some of these other issues.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's set in stone that the Forest Service may not at some point in the future look at different rules for different places. The answer that I've gotten is that they did travel planning that covered the South Hills. They're not ready to embark on another travel planning effort. And I think in a lot of ways it was unfortunate. We had a lot of travel planning in the early 2000s prior to e-bikes becoming as widely used as they are now.
Right.
So they weren't really, they didn't assess that as a possibility. And I think that may change over time. And I think along that light, with some change in management principles and such, I think there would possibly be some latitude with the deed restrictions. Those are all things that I think we need to work through as we go out into the future. And I say that in having studied other trail systems that are probably a decade ahead of us in this issue. And I watched them proceed through a path of coming up with some answers. In Park City, Utah, that answer was that if you're over age 65, you got a single track trail pass. And so you went in and probably paid a fee, and you got your right at that age to use an e-bike class 1 and 2 on a single track trail.
Right.
And so that's where I see it, I guess, but that's just my personal.
It's a sensitive issue because, as you talk about e-bikes, the throttle bikes are, in my mind, much more akin to a motorcycle. I mean, there's the enthusiasts, they get out there and pedal and just use the assistance they need to, and then there's, on the other end of the spectrum, the ability to use the electronic bikes as motorbikes. So,
And that more severely complicates the issue. But that's kind of what I see on the horizon. Is I think there will be more latitude over time, and we'll just have to wait to see that. But the city will certainly, engage with our partners when that time comes.
okay, thank you. Thanks for bringing that up, Ellen.
Yeah, of course.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Does anybody online have a question?
Okay, I'd like to move to the 2025 transition plan review. Ellie?
Yeah, do you want to discuss this or do you want me to?
I can give a little information and then you can
I'll
answer
fill in
the
blanks.
questions.
Absolutely, sure.
As all of you probably know, the past years and most recent years, update to the transition plan information is on your committee's website. That might be a lot.
On
I
the
think it's
ADA
on the
website.
ADA website, not on the board's website, sorry, on the city's website. And we're in the process now, this is the time of year where we start collecting information from all the different departments to update what projects they've done in the last fiscal year, since that ends June 30th. And then which of the projects left on the list they have planned for the coming year or the next fiscal year. And in part of that process, just so all of you know, we should have an updated spreadsheet out there in the fall. We give departments time to get through their budget time and then go through and let us know what projects have been completed. This year, what we're going to do is start having quarterly meetings with all the departments and their directors or the individuals within each department. The directors have decided to have be their main facilitator, main point of contact person, just to make sure that we're really looking at what's in your budget, what do you plan to put in your budget, what do we need to do for the next fiscal year to really kind of backdate that from when their process starts to be putting items in the budget. Also looking at some of the items that have been listed as completed in the past, just making sure we're really having a very accurate document that's out there for the public to see, whether it's in staff areas or areas for the public. As you all know, it's about 127-page spreadsheet of items. And so some of those have been completed over the years. Some will have been completed this year. So the one that's on the website right now is what information we received last summer. So please keep in mind that has not been updated yet from this whole last year of work that different departments have done. But just wanted to let you all know that I'm meeting with the city manager about how to work within all of the departments and really keep that information updated and help people figure out their next plan for some of the work. As you all know, some of the projects were bigger than others, some were smaller than others, some were things that were a little bit easier to do because remodel plans already existed for certain buildings or parks, that then they were able to alleviate some of the things that were on the list that needed to be done. But we'll just keep you all updated on all of that information. But just to let you know, there's all the directors. We had a meeting with them 2 weeks ago to talk about setting quarterly meetings when everyone can come together, talk about what projects they're working on, how to get it in their budgets, and how to work together across the departments, and what sort of role there might be for the committee as well.
I don't have much further to add to that other than following the phone call that I had with you a couple months ago now, Gina, actually, I went to talk to Manager Barton, and he is deeply invested in trying to elevate this issue and really work toward prioritizing these needs with our city facilities and access to our services programs. So this is one side of that coin. We also want to, at some stage in the near future, revisit the role of this advisory board to elevate what you guys do. So that is something that's on our docket, in addition to the work that is ongoing with the city attorney's office to try to address how we're going to handle enforcement writ large for the city, not just with regard to ADA, which often is, as Dave well knows, a right-of-way matter. But yeah, those are all things that are on our docket right now that we're trying to do. But the transition plan is where we are presently right now in this process. But we want to really work to get through that essentially punch list that is part of the transition plan to make the necessary improvements and everything for the community's benefit. So trying to make that more ingrained in our capital improvements process and everything going forward. It's like intention.
That's good. I certainly appreciate that.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I apologize for my tardiness. On my way in, I saw the mayor.
Oh.
And I again expressed how unsafe I feel using the parking lot here at the city county building. And that I did break my shoulder all those years ago. And he made like it was the first time he was hearing about it again. And if I could please bring it forward so that everybody at the next, I don't know if it was a commissioners meeting or whatnot. So I guess I'm again voicing, you know, that I hope it becomes a priority that the parking lot, especially for this building and other well-used buildings are really addressed and not just new striping put outside as what was recently done. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
And I guess if I could just add to, I know probably all of you know this, but that spreadsheet that we put on the website that everybody goes through really is just physical. The department directors and their designees, when we start doing the quarterly meetings, will also be taking looks within each of their departments at their programs and services. So those items aren't really listed in that, as Ellie calls it, a punch list spreadsheet, but please know that's also part of the discussions going on is all of the programs that take place in the physical buildings. While that one is just the physical spaces, they will also be reevaluating the access to the services.
I'm sure they'll be putting more on that in months to come. And as far as bringing more directors to you to tell you about what's occurring across different departments and things, I don't know who will have up next. Dave has presented. You've presented. Craig has presented.
Could we have a housing? I mean, I would be interested in where public housing is. I mean, that's a pretty critical element. Services.
Sure, that's not really in our remit per se.
Right. Okay.
If there's something more specific you want to know about though.
No, I was just thinking we have a lot of public housing and I don't know, that's not necessarily city owned or is
It
it?
isn't city owned. We do appoint the board for the housing authority.
Right.
I'm sure Michael O'Neill would be happy to talk to you at great length about what he's dealing with right now with trying to go through what's called a repositioning process with HUD so that they can take ownership of the properties, which the city is fully in support of. And if, you know, when it becomes available to them to, when they work through that process and it's no longer public housing per se, as such. And Commissioner Reed, please correct me if I'm using the wrong terminology here because you've been a party to many conversations with this as a subject. So, but anyway, we want to try and support them to add density on their existing properties once they are allowed to do so. The zoning and everything is in place to enable them to build more on their existing sites and everything. And in as much as is possible, I know for years Michael O'Neill, the director of the Housing Authority, has said that he wants to see more permanent supportive housing. So that is a key component where we've got the necessary support services on site for residents to address their many needs, not just their housing needs.
HUD recently made it known that if any of their facilities, properties were not in compliance with the ADA to bring suit. And I had been after Helena Habitat for Humanity since I moved here when I saw that they were building new construction homes with a one-step going into the residence. When I brought it to their attention, they said that, Gina, you can go through the garage. That's accessible. And I said, have you seen garages, how small they are? Garbage cans, vehicles, like you can't get a wheelchair in through there. So recently, Helena Habitat for Humanity is now building universal design homes, and it'll increase the cost of the homes by 13,000, I believe, so that they have zero entry. It's more expensive to put zero entry into to build steps. And why that is when you use less concrete and forms, I don't know, but I think if we can make that a mainstay, that'd be good. So I think it's really important for the city of Helena, when things do happen and when they approve plans, to make sure that we're not building affordable housing that is not accessible housing. We need to have affordable, accessible housing, because for over 3 decades, I have been wheeling around, and housing, accessible housing in Helena has been an issue that I moved out of Helena multiple times because I couldn't find accessible housing. And the last time when I moved back in 2018, I was actually homeless. I couldn't find accessible housing anywhere. All the homes that were lined out fell through, and I was at the YWCA. So housing and transportation is a huge concern for Helena, and always has been, and it just hasn't been readily recognized. So
it definitely remains a problem, and the city doesn't enforce fair housing requirements, but certainly with multifamily construction, you know, their developers, the owners are beholden to adhere to those requirements for accessibility and things. And that's about as much of a blanket statement as I can make about that, since we don't enforce it, but you're not wrong. I had another thought that I was going to share related to your last point, Gina, and I've lost it.
And transportation has improved over the years because now it's a curb to curb service. It's not a fixed route, so you can go anywhere within the city limits. You can pick up and drop off.
right, but my Brace guy's outside of city limits, so
Yeah,
that's a problem, because so much is out of city limits. And then even with Walmart and transportation not being able to, did they change that where they can drop them off nearby, or is it still way far away?
they're not allowed to drop off in the fire lane like they were in the past, because it's actually a no parking area. I'm not sure exactly where they're dropping off at Walmart. Most stores, they're dropping off at the entrances. So.
But not Walmart. So yeah, and I don't remember where they're dropping off. And the developers, are they now required to make accessible both sides of the street and streets wide enough? Like our Great Northern, we've never resolved that with the developer and the city, and you know, having the movie theater and the alleyway and the parking lot and no safe route of travel. Like, are there plans like to ever rectify that?
The plat still remains what it is, which shows that it's still in the developer's ownership. The sidewalks and the on-street parking are still owned by the developer. And we just have travel lanes. I don't believe that there has been any push to try and have.
So my
A
numerous
route of travel.
contacts to the property management, whatever, Ellen Nicholson's firm,
Mhm.
like that's 5 years.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I guess I hope that the city doesn't let that happen again with all the construction that's going on and development.
Mhm. One thing that I was going to bring to your attention, and what you were talking about with regard to housing brought it to mind, in transportation. The city commission, I believe last night, Commissioner Reed did pass the resolution to join the AARP age-friendly network of communities. So that is something that we're going to do as we move forward with planning projects. We're going to be viewing everything through the lens as sort of a cradle to grave, livable, accessible community for everybody. So it's well timed, as we are currently working on our land use plan process where we're converting our growth policy into a land use plan per new state laws with our new land use regime. So our 2019 growth policy did tick the necessary boxes on that front though, which is a good thing. So we have a good starting place. But surely we can always do better. So that is going to be a great asset to us, and we'll have access to their network for resources and being able to have conversations with other jurisdictions to learn from them. We're very excited. So,
Yes, that was correct. Sorry. We
Commissioner,
did pass it last night.
wonderful. So that's great. And they have, the city of Helena, as you can speak to, Brad, has been very successful, not necessarily the city itself, but entities within the city in securing challenge grants through AARP over the years because it assisted with the Ambrose Trail improvements and other things around Rodney Street. And they recently were awarded funds for a PPLT trail out in the county near the fort for accessibility improvements. So it's a great group to be aligned with.
Are there any other comments by the committee, or I don't think we have any public meeting, but are there any additional comments?
Would that be comments? This is Jacob Krisovich. Would that be comments about this topic, or are we closing up and it's just general questions?
This topic or anything else you want to talk about?
Okay. I was just a little unclear, Ellie, and I was hoping you could provide further clarity on where exactly we stand with the code enforcement. The previous meeting that got canceled, we were supposed to have an update on that. And so I'm just kind of curious because it was supposed to be a couple weeks, like a several weeks process, and we're in July and we haven't heard anything really of much of action or movement on that. So I'm just kind of curious.
So I'm actually going to defer, Dave, have there been other conversations at leadership team meetings I haven't been privy to? Have you heard anything further or been involved in conversations with the city attorney about where they are with reviewing code amendments for enforcement?
I mean, it started off as a pretty simple idea, and then it has grown into a little bit more of a monster than it wasn't just in. So like I said last time, it started off as ADA infractions, and then the discussion was, well, how do we, quantify all ADA infractions without missing something? And then it was, well, maybe it's just, instead of just ADA infractions, we encompass just the entire the enforcement arm itself. But within the enforcement piece, even with just looking through the ADA lens, there are sections of code that don't address what enforcement is. Some say it's a $25 fine, some are silent on it. So the process now is going through all those sections of code and adding the language. We're trying to do a blanket document that covers all of those so that it would be enforceable, because at this point there are sections of code that even if we said we were going along these lines, the code doesn't allow for any enforcement. So it's bringing those into alignment as well.
And my understanding, talking to you, I think was Ellie, so we probably won't hear much until fall. Maybe something will start gelling in the fall. Is that correct?
I think we would all love for that to be the case. Whether that's a realistic timeline, I don't know. Because again, like Dave just mentioned, as I said earlier, they're looking at enforcement writ large for the city. So it's right-of-way enforcement, it's zoning code enforcement, it's ADA enforcement matters. It's the panoply of different enforcement matters that the city might have jurisdiction over, in trying to create some sort of unified front on how we tackle all of it, and staff it accordingly too. I think that's a kicker with it. So it is a slow burn, but I think we're getting there. The city attorneys have definitely been working on it. I'm low man on the totem pole and don't necessarily hear about those updates as much, which is why I had to defer to Dave. So thank you, Dave. I appreciate it, per usual.
Thank you.
other communications? Any proposals of what committee members would like to see the next presentation on the September meeting?
Hi, can I add a suggestion / comment?
Yes, please, Commissioner.
Okay. I'd love it if we could maybe have the enforcement issue as a standing item, as the timeline appears slightly unclear. Maybe we can just have a regular check-in on where things are. And if there is a presentation that's possible, that would be great on that topic, but I think it is one that has sort of lingered and come and gone. So if it's just there each meeting to check in on and sort of check in on progress, I think that could be useful. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. And that actually brings to mind one department that has not had a chance to present to you over the past 12 months is the City Attorney's Office. So maybe we could prevail upon them to join us in September if their schedules allow for it.
Okay.
And see if they can give us an update on what they're conceiving of, if nothing else. Would that work, Chair?
Sure, that would be great.
This is Jacob.
Yes.
I think that would be a great idea. Then also going off of Commissioner Reed's suggestion, I actually very much appreciate that suggestion. I think it's a great one. How do we, is that something that requires a motion to be done to add that as a standing line item for the agenda?
I think so long as the chair
I
wishes
think
it
we
to
could
be.
just do it. I don't think we
Okay.
need to.
Yeah, but thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure that if it's agreeable that it happens. So thanks, I appreciate it.
If there's nothing else that needs to be brought up, I would move that we adjourn.
I second it.
Thank you, everybody who
Thank
attended in person and online. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Good luck with the rest of the summer.
Yes. Thank you, Brad. For,
Thank you
coming.
so much for
Appreciate
your
it.
time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm not going to tell you have to do this, but certainly if you guys wanted to partner together to do a walk and ride through on the DeFord Trail.